Hello and welcome to the Heart of the Stories We Tell, a series where I spend way too much time trying to think about aspects of a story. Today, I'm going to try to walk through and figure out one part in particular: setting. It's an easy one. It's where your story takes place. Thank you and good night, everyone! No, just kidding. So I'm totally going to take that 5 simple word explanation and stretch it and twist it and totally pull it apart as complicated idea as I can make it. It can actually be where or when. Let's take a look at the first Captain America movie in the MCU. Its setting could be described as New York and Germany. That doesn't really express the setting, though. Military bases? Technically true. However, what about World War II? The least amount of words to get the setting across is actually describing the time period, not the places. Now, it works because we already have a good idea of what World War II means, but that's only because TV shows and history books have already given us an idea of what those words mean. What if the time or place never existed? The words World War II have little meaning without the context, but it still wraps up the entirety of what the setting of Captain America, the First Avenger, is. What about sci-fi? They can all be said to take place in the future, or at least most of them. But is that really a setting? If so, does Babylon 5, Star Trek, and the Alien movies all take place in the same setting? Of course not. No more than describing Battlestar Galactica as taking place in a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away would put it in Star Wars in the same setting. What about fantasy? Telling someone who knows nothing of Tolkien, do those people still exist? It would be like finding a Betamax, right? They don't make you anymore. Right. And telling them the setting of Lord of the Rings is Middle Earth. Well, just that doesn't mean anything to them. Heck, I bet there are more than some readers of A Song of Fire and Ice and a good portion of Game of Thrones fans that would have to think about it if I asked if they wanted to see more stuff on Planetos. That's the world those stories take place in. No, really, you can Google it. I'll wait. Don't worry, I'll wait. So yeah, but all of you that didn't know Planetos most likely would know if I said more stuff taking place in the Seven Kingdoms. However, if you don't watch the show or read the book, am I talking to Betamaxes again? Even that means little to nothing. So let's unpack this. Let's really look at the settings and what they mean. Sometimes settings barely matter at all. Other times, it's the make or break of the whole story. Let's be honest, a love story on the Titanic, a love story on the Hindenburg, a love story on a doomed space station falling out of orbit, all can be pretty interchangeable. The love story doesn't need the setting. The setting is just a backdrop. If your story is a bank robbery, then the setting will affect it some. A cowboy Wild West bank robbery looks different than a 1970s bank robbery, which looks different than one pulled nowadays with computers, and still different than one that would take place in Harry Potter's vaults. But the main beats would still be the same. In fact, I bet just saying the words bank robbery puts certain thoughts in your head. Okay, you want to have some fun? Pick a story. Anything you love. Something really well made. Doesn't matter. Game, movie, novel. Now take the setting. The where and the when. And does it matter? Would Captain America, the scrawny patriotic kid who doesn't like bullies, given a perfect body and going off to fight the enemy, sound different if it takes place in the Vietnam War? What about the first Iraq War? What if he wasn't an American? Is James Bond a product of the Cold War? Or the War on Terror? What about King Arthur? Is it the same if it's President Arthur, and his wife is the First Lady, and the member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Well, you know what? Never mind that. Forget that one. I'm going to pitch that one to Hollywood myself. What about a generic horror story? Is a dark and stormy night the same as a happy, sunny, partly cloudy afternoon? I don't know about you, but I'd rather hunt vampires on the latter, not the former. Unless the vampire sparkles. Those are horrifying whenever. So what do you think of when you think of setting? I think about how it interacts with the story. I think of Camp Crystal Lake and Kelman's Camp and Camp Walden, and all three of them subtly influencing their story. A setting can be as specific as a dark and stormy Friday the 13th, or as general as a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But odds are it was chosen for a reason. One more example I want to touch on comes from, of all places, as MTV. Now, I'm old enough to remember a time when MTV played music videos, so it's a bit odd to talk to me about their fantasy TV show. The Shannara Chronicles are based on one of the first modern fantasy novels by Terry Brooks. He has a big hand in the production of the series, so as far as adaptations go, it should be pretty close. The setting looks pretty fantasy at first glance. Four main lands. In the west we have the elves, in the east we have the dwarves, in the south we have the humans, in the northlands we have the trolls and the gnomes and the skullbearers. However, that's not the whole story. The Sword of Shannara takes place 2,000 years after a great war. Yeah, I know, still sounds fantasy tropish. But this was a nuclear war. The locations that I mentioned are places science destroyed the landscape in a horrific holocaust and mutated the remaining people. Those mutants, trolls, gnomes, dwarves. So the setting is one part post-apocalypse and one part fantasy. The elves are still magical, long-lived, and were just away for a time. Now, people give Terry Brooks a lot of shit over being a Tolkien clone, but that's a damn interesting setting. The Elfstones and the Sword of Shannara are not the One Ring, and Middle-earth is not a post-apocalyptic Earth with druids that still know how tech works. All of that is really just a long and fancy way to get to the setting is the environment in which a story or events take place. Setting can include specific information and time and place, or simply be descriptive. As I walk through the heart of the stories we tell, I hope you understand that some stories are the exact same story told in different settings. Maybe I should give an example. Let's start with simple. West Side Story and Romeo and Juliet. Everyone knows that's it. But let me blow your mind with a second one. Barbed Wire, the Pamela Anderson movie, is Casablanca. The first one, a story of two star-crossed lovers in the middle of a conflict neither is really responsible for, is really a go-to one. When Shakespeare wrote it, or in the 40s and 50s when Marlon Brando produced it, the story is pretty much the same. A little different, but still very similar. Story of ex-lovers needing help, and one walking into the bar owned by the other in Monaco in World War II, or a future post-apocalypse, is still pretty similar. So think about the two. Who do you think did it better? Anyone answering barbed wire is dead to me. But with that, I will leave you to the comment section. The setting is the first step we take together to get to the heart of the stories we tell.